yeah, well, you don't need perfect credit, huh? Even with credit scores in the 500s, it only takes a cup of coffee to get started. Dig it? Oh, yeah, snap into it.
Welcome to Something To Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
Well, you know, that's not a rib.
She pooted.
What a rib? No, yeah,
There's no box of gimmicks.
Rumor and innuendo.
I don't deal in rumor and innuendo. And was he there? I was there. I don't give a shit. I ain't scared.
I ain't scared of shit.
Fuck him.
You, Bruce.
I love you. Double cheeseburger. Double cheese. Double mayo. Double onion, motherfucker.
Bruce Prichard.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
Blame it all on my roots. I showed up in boots and ruined your black tie affair. I was the last one to know, the last one to show. I was the last one you thought you'd see there. So here's a good story about that, man. I used to go and play pool all the time at Slick Willie's Family Pool Hall and Neighborhood Bar in Houston, Texas, right off the Fuquay exit there. It's not there anymore. But they had a jukebox. And my buddy and I would always go in, and I would go over to the jukebox, and I would drop my money, and I would go down like I'm going to pick up the money, and I would bump the jukebox and unplug it, which would then erase everybody's selections if anyone had any selections before I got in there.
Oh, my.
And then I would very quickly plug it in. I would put my money in, and I would put my suggestions in. And every night, you know, that we would be there until I figured out how to do this, they would play this song. And I thought it was called the Oasis. So I'm looking at all over the damn thing for, you know, where's that Oasis song? Because I figured if I could play that, intersperse it with a little bit of country, that nobody would be the wiser. But yeah, I don't know why I felt the need to tell that story, but I did.
Well, I'm glad you did, and I'm glad to be recording with you today. A very rare Sunday recording as we take a stroll down memory lane to talk about one of the big what ifs in WWE history, or at least in my opinion. We're talking about the end.
Your opinion.
My opinion.
Okay.
Ken Shamrock in the WWE is our topic today. Man, I saw a ton of great feedback on social media about our conversations about superstar Billy Graham and Over the Edge itself. And
so you got me doing that. That's real good. Okay. Anyway, I shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry.
Do you want to show everybody that giant white nose hair you pulled out?
No, I can't find it, but it was a big one. It was long.
How does one get gray nose hair?
By getting old.
Okay. And how does the nose hair get so long it touches your lip?
Well, it just, you know, sometimes it curls. Okay. And it curls and it starts going back in there. So like then when you go and you breathe and it just kind of like makes that one hair come out. And it's like, oh my God, what's that? And you go boom, and you got to pull it out.
Shout out to the Weed Whacker.
You know,
Manscaped. So listen, we talked about Ken Shamrock last year. We're going to pick it up where we left off. Of course, it ends 1998, at least ends, with him being a double champion. He's going to be both an Intercontinental champion and a tag team champion, along with the Big Boss Man. One of the top heels in the corporation here. As we go into 99, you know, listen, we should just add some context. We end 97 with him challenging Shawn Michaels for the world title in December at the In Your House pay-per-view. And even though he's got some gold here in 98, it does feel like he's lost some momentum. Do you think overall you guys had maybe cooled on Shamrock during the year 1998?
No, I think Ken was doing well. He was involved in storylines. And as you said, he was a double champion. That's hardly cooling someone.
Well, I guess I'm just asking, how crowded is it? Because that may be the other issue. The top is so crowded here. Like when you guys got white hot through 98, it feels like there's just top guys all over the place, which is a great thing. And probably one of the reasons you guys set so many records. But I don't know, man. Maybe I just can't let it go. I just think about Shamrock and I think, man, he could have been right there at the tippy top of the card.
Well, he definitely could have been. A lot of guys could have been, but there's only so much room at the top. And I
Right.
do think that Ken had an excellent run and was right up there with everybody. They all, everybody can't be champion.
That's right. Well, Ken and the Big Boss Man are going to drop those tag titles to Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart on January 25th, 1999. That all happens on a Monday Night Raw. Why Jeff and Owen here and not say the Outlaws? It does feel like at different times there's been different, I don't know, approaches to tag team wrestling in the WWF. Once upon a time, everybody was a team. Guys like the Hart Foundation or the Rockers or the Killer Bees. And then that evolved, it seems. And then we started to see two guys put together and they have their own personality, but they're not necessarily a traditional tag team. Why the paradigm shift in that approach to tag team wrestling over the years, do you think?
Well, first of all, I don't think that there is a paradigm shift. I just think it's, different philosophies for different people at different times in the business. There were always tag teams in the business. Make no mistake about it. You go all the way back, to the Von Brauners and the Infernos and the Assassins. Then later years, Rock and Roll Express and Midnight Express. But for the most part, teams were usually made up of two guys that didn't really necessarily have a whole lot going on. Put them together as a team for a while, and it just kind of freshens them up somewhat. But, that's just a philosophy of taking two guys that you're going, okay, what are we going to do with them in a singles capacity? Maybe they work well together. So put them together and make them a tag team.
Well, that's what happens. And then out of nowhere, an attractive woman is sitting ringside and Val Venus makes a pass at her. Ken comes racing down and attacks Val while Billy Gunn, who's feuding with Ken Shamrock, comes out as well. So it seems like we're setting up a three-way program. Before we go any further, though, what do you remember about the way the Ryan Shamrock character came to be? And as the story goes, was perhaps a movie that Vince Russo watched that gave him the inspiration for this story?
I have no idea.
Okay.
From my vantage point, it was Russo was looking for someone to be Ken Shamrock's sister for a one-off for, this one single shot that it was a Houston event. And I was asked to find someone to play that role and went through a friend of mine and there she was. And Ryan Shamrock was born.
Alicia Webb is the person behind the character Ryan Shamrock. You said you went through a friend of yours. Is this a casting agency?
This was a friend of mine that was a DJ. And he played in had a rock band. And so he played a lot of clubs. And he just happened to know her and said, man, we were looking for someone like her. She had a very fresh face. She didn't look like a stripper. She didn't look like, anything else. And she was not a stripper. And she was a friend of somebody in the band. And he asked her, hey, would you like to do it? And we used her on TV. And the rest, they say, is history.
Where does the stripper talk come from?
I don't know. I think that's what people just sometimes assume and put that label on there and no one ever corrects it. But she definitely was not.
It's written in the great book, written by our pal Jonathan Snowden, Shamrock, the World's Most Dangerous Man, that this program would be the albatross that would sink his personal and professional life. Was Ken, as far as you know, having any personal issues at this point?
God, I don't really know. I don't know.
Val would continue to go after Ryan as Ken would proclaim that his sister had no right to make her own decisions because he's there for her decisions and to make her decisions for her. And Vince Russo has said on the record that he thought Ken Shamrock was the biggest waste that the WWF ever had for missing money with him.
Who said that?
Vince Russo. And it's like, if that's his stance, why did he write this story? I don't get it.
Yeah, it does make a whole lot of sense, but he's pretty good about blaming other people for everything. So,
what do you remember about Saving Ryan's Privates, the movie?
Oh my God. Look, Val was the former porn star.
Okay.
That character that he portrayed, and there was, look, man, it had limited shelf life, but the shelf life it did have was able to provide some provocative and interesting programming for a while, but it wasn't anything that you could really sustain. But it was, it was good. It was fun.
Ken's working with Billy Gunn after the Rumble on all the house shows, but the match for St. Valentine's Day Massacre is Ken versus Val with Billy Gunn as the special guest referee. And Val gets the win after Billy hits Ken with a fast count. And it's reported that Shamrock wasn't exactly in the best health at this time. He had some sort of illness. Do you remember anything about this? And did that have anything to do with him dropping the title here?
So I know at one point Ken had like an intestinal thing going on where he was coughing up blood and just didn't know exactly what was going on. Didn't know if maybe it was either in his throat or if it was something in his intestines or what it was. But yeah, Ken did have a few months there where he wasn't in the best of shape.
This sort of feels like almost the story of Ken Shamrock. Like, we get a little momentum and then something happens, whether it's an injury or something else that just sidelines his trajectory. Do you ever think that there's certain talent who, man, timing was just seemingly never on their side? Their career at times just felt snake bit just based on that bad timing.
Yeah, I think that there are, probably quite a few. Of course, when you put me on the spot to name some, I can't come up with a name. But yes, it does happen. And timing is everything. And timing can either make it or break it one way or the other. That's why when someone is coming in and they would be like, oh gosh, I don't want to do that. It's like, well, if you do this, you have an opportunity to now show your wares and make that the absolute best that it can possibly be. That opens up more doors. If you don't do it, someone else is going to do it and be in the story, and they may flourish. And all of a sudden you'll be going, oh man, I wish I had that opportunity. So I would always try to stress to people to always take every opportunity that you have, make the most of it. Whether it's something that you're looking at and going, oh, hey, is this right for me? Or is this right for my character? Man, look at it as here's an opportunity to show them what I can do. Whether I can take something that I consider to be bad material and make it the best it can possibly be, or I just don't really want to do it, half-ass it, and then you get half-ass results.
You think I appreciate that. I'm glad we're having this conversation. I tend to agree with you, but I do want to know, do you think there's ever a time when a talent should be more protective of their character and say, I don't know about that?
Sure, they can. Absolutely. I don't have a problem with people being selfish. At the same time, you do have to have faith, and sometimes you got to go out on a limb. And I believe that the best opportunities are those opportunities that are not necessarily, hey, here you go, we're going to give you all of this and put all this behind you. The best opportunities are the opportunities that you make the most out of. Stone Cold Steve Austin and Austin 3:16 just whipped your ass. That was taking an opportunity to talk after the King of the Ring and make it a lot more than just an interview. There are different opportunities as you go along the way that can help define a career. And if you weren't there in it, then you don't have that opportunity.
How do you identify as a talent? How do you know? Is there a rule of thumb? Is there a piece of advice that you would say, like a mindset or a mentality to make that approach? Just sort of identify, hey, this is something that I should go for and roll the dice on, or hey, this is probably something I should try to pull back on.
Look, man, if you want to be a star, you got to be on TV and you got to be able to do things and show that you have a range. All right. If you want to be a one-dimensional thing and this is all I want to do, then you're going to be a one-dimensional character that people are going to forget about pretty quickly. It's range, and it's being able to do a lot of different things. And although you may think, oh my God, this is going to kill my career. Well, sometimes it can make your career. and you have to do the best. Not everything is going to work. Nobody, if we had that crystal ball to be able to see, well, this is going to work perfectly,
Right.
then by God, you've got a crystal ball. You got to try things. You got to experiment. And I think it's important a lot of times for talent to have input in what they do. I also think it's important for them to have faith as well.
Hey, I want to ask you about another switch that happens here during this whole Ryan Shamrock saga, and it gets a lot of TV time. We see Shamrock and Gunn being programmed together for months, but then randomly Road Dogg beats Val Venus on TV for the IC title on the lead up to WrestleMania here in '99. So essentially, Road Dogg and Billy Gunn almost switch spots, where instead of Gunn challenging for the Intercontinental title, now it's going to be Road Dogg. It's a little weird. Why the change? Why do they sort of do the role reversal here? Do you recall?
I don't. That was kind of Russo's way of writing sometimes is, the shotgun TV, and bro, you never know what to expect. Well, you didn't know what to expect because a lot of times not everything was played out in the storyline.
Right.
And sometimes just to shake things up or for this swerve, bro. It's when that's all it is, when everything's about to swerve, it becomes it's just not interesting.
Let's talk a little bit about what happens at WrestleMania. Ryan goes on to be dumped by Val Venus and then to be involved with Goldust. So Mania is now a 4-way. It's Shamrock and Venus are counted out while Dogg is going to go ahead and pin Goldust. So it's a 4-way here at WrestleMania 15 in Philadelphia. Ryan Shamrock, right in the middle of all this. You've told us, this is really the Russo era. What did Vince McMahon think of the Shamrock story, the Ryan Shamrock story?
I think, it was another character. It was another character to add into the play. And again, as I said from the very beginning, she was a one-off. It was going to be Houston, and that was it, to do this cameo. From there, we, brought her in, actually put her in the ring to learn how to bump and to train her a little bit. Great attitude. I don't think she really understood what she was getting into at first because, it's like, hey, just all this thrust upon you pretty quickly. But, Ryan had the capacity and the willingness to learn. And she was like, okay, if I need to learn how to protect myself and take a bump, then let's, get in the ring and learn how to protect myself. I don't think anybody was looking for her to have matches.
Ken Shamrock had this to say. They wanted the angle to be that instead of me wanting to protect her, which is what they initially said it would be, that I really wanted to be with her, like sexually be with her. They went to me to actually pretend like I'm having sex with my sister. And I've actually got a son named Ryan Shamrock too. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. I said, I can't do that. I have kids and they go to school with their daddy wanting to have sex with his sister. Really? So, man, lot to unpack here. There's the about face. I know it's the Attitude Era. In hindsight, that feels like an idea I'd be okay with somebody putting their foot down on.
I would be okay with that too. Again, because that when you have something, I always go back to the Ray and Eddie story with Dominic Mysterio. That was real life. That was Eddie had written a book about having a child out of wedlock. Didn't give the sex, didn't give the timeline, nothing. Just this had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that from there and played with it and got to talk, but I talked to everybody first. I talked to Eddie and Vicky. I talked to Ray and Angie, and then everybody together because it was real life. Angie and Ray's son is going to school every day, but yet on television, Ray's real son, Dominic, is being portrayed as, could he be Eddie Guerrero's son? So that's taking real life and making a movie out of it with the actual characters. And that's hard to draw that line, and extremely, even harder for children to be able to draw that line and understand it. So it's a very fine balancing act. And when you're saying to someone, okay, we want to do this with you, I don't think that incest would ever be a good angle
Right.
to do. So Ken being uncomfortable with that, I don't blame him for being uncomfortable with that. I don't think that's something that I would want to do either.
There are conspiracy theorists out there that say that because he wasn't really willing to go along with that creative, that he sort of gets pushed down the card a little bit. I would normally try to argue that, but the Blue Meanie knocked him out on an episode of Monday Night Raw. And I know you and I think a lot of Blue Meanie, but come on, man. Blue Meanie knocking out Ken Shamrock. I don't know about that.
Did you see it?
Yep.
Well, then it happened.
I love you for that. Is that a Vinceism you just dropped on me? They'll believe it.
That's just life.
Yeah.
You saw it happen.
I love it. Well, Vince apparently loves the story so much, he transfers the feud over between the corporation and the Ministry of Darkness. And surprise, surprise, the ministry winds up kidnapping Ryan while Ken Shamrock is beaten up and ambushed. And Ryan would eventually be, I don't want to say sacrificed, but she winds up on the Undertaker's symbol. Of course, the most infamous scene is where Stephanie McMahon is kidnapped and Shamrock goes on a search around the arena for Mr. McMahon in his wrestling trunks. I got to say, though, the visual of Ken looking for Stephanie in his little blue tights, that just tickles me.
Yeah, I like those little blue trunks, huh?
Well, it's just, I don't know. I hope when I turn on CSI one day, the cops are running around kick pads and trunks. That'd be badass.
Well, if you were the world's most dangerous man, that's all you need, dog. That's all you need.
Wade Keller wrote this at the time.
First name Ken, last name Shamrock. It was on those pads, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Read the boots.
Yeah, read the boots.
When Ken Shamrock began asking people backstage if they had seen Stephanie, were we as viewers supposed to believe the people backstage weren't already aware that the boss's daughter had been kidnapped? Then when Ken Shamrock found out where Stephanie was, he was the only one to go looking for her in the basement. You would think Vince would have sent dozens of people down there immediately. Come on. The TV writing can be better than this. There's so many unnatural actions by so many parties that it's almost impossible to suspend disbelief and just enjoy the show.
If you're going to analyze everything that way,
yes,
then you know what? Fuck off. Come on. Suspend your disbelief. Have fun with it. Go ahead and go along with the ride. I wonder where this is going to go. Because I guarantee you, if you take that same microscope and put it on every other television show that you watch and that's your favorite show, you're going to be very disappointed and go through life with pretty damn just rotten disposition in general.
Let me ask, I know some of those other shows, traditional shows, not wrestling shows, they would have like a continuity person. Did WWE ever have a continuity person like that?
We tried. I say yes and no. Yeah, we tried, but sometimes it's between the reality of dealing with human beings and injuries and everything else that can happen. Sometimes it just gets fucked up.
Well, listen, it's not for a lack of trying. Eventually, Shamrock would convince Christian to tell Ken where to find Stephanie. And there she was in the basement. That leads to Christian being crucified. Put on the symbol. Shades of gray and all that jazz. But here's Shamrock being a baby face for the evil owner Vince, fighting another evil guy in the Undertaker. This is some complicated storytelling. I don't know if this would have flown in the Bosch era.
Oh, God, yeah, we did this all the time in Houston with Jose Lothario, and Dory Funk took his jacket. And then Dory Funk had his jacket stolen by Jose Lothario. His West Texas State jacket, number 76, I believe. And Jose had it. Ben por ella! Come and get it. And that got him a world championship match because Dory wanted that Letterman's jacket because, by God, he earned it. No different than losing your sister and finding her because you earned it.
Remember when they put Dory on a symbol? Those are the days.
Yeah.
At Backlash, Shamrock gets his big one-on-one match with The Undertaker. Normally that seems like that'd be a big deal, but here, Taker eats him up. Takes a lot of the match, using all types of submissions on him. Yeah, the Ultimate Fighter, Undertaker.
Yeah.
Eventually,
Matter of fact,
Shamrock works his way into catching Taker.
you doubt that?
Bradshaw comes out for the save. Taker hits him with the tombstone. 1, 2, 3. And then Bradshaw would choke Shamrock out afterwards with a baseball bat as well. It does feel like my man's being punished a little bit. Blue Meanie's knocking
Punished
him
for
out.
what?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
No.
Okay. The next night on Raw is Shamrock versus Bradshaw. Shamrock is going to tell this story. Quote, I'm in the ring working out with Steve Blackman, rolling around and tapping him out left and right. Someone goes, get in there, Bradshaw. You could take him. So I go, okay, I'll lay down. I'll let you grab your best hold and I'll submit you in less than a minute. And so everybody goes, oh, come on, Bradshaw, do it. So Bradshaw goes to the ring and he grabs a hold on me. And in 15 seconds, I tapped him out. You remember
Didn't
this?
take him that long. It did not take him that long. And the best part about it is Ken like just had reached the point of beyond fed up. And Ken's like, Bradshaw, come on in here, man. I will lay down. You put any hold on me that you want to put on me, and I will beat your ass. And John's like, well, goddamn, Mr. Shamrock, I don't want to hurt you or anything. He goes, John, come on. And Ken laid down in the middle of the ring, legs spread, arms spread. And John got in, and John got up and like kicked him a little bit, like see if he was moving. And Kenny didn't flinch. John gets down on all fours, and he like grabs an arm, he grabs a leg, and he's trying to figure out what he's going to do and how he's going to do it. And all of a sudden, he sits there, he's on his hands and knees. He says, I don't know any holds. And John didn't know what to, like he could have done, Ken would have laid there for him. And finally, Ken like showed him how to put on an arm bar or some kind of shit. And John had it locked in. And Ken says, okay, you sure you got me? Have you got me? I think so. Let me know when you're sure. Okay, I got you. And in about 5 seconds, Kenny had reversed it and Bradshaw was tapping air. Bless his heart. But it was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen in my life.
I feel like we've heard that story twice from you and for different people. Steve Blackman and Ken Shamrock.
Well, Blackman was another one. So no, Blackman was the one they actually got into a fight at Baggage Claim.
Right.
So he had been harassing Steve Blackman just so much and egging Steve on. And then they were at Baggage Claim and everybody was tired and everything else. And somebody like either goosed Blackman or did something to Blackman. Blackman thought it was Bradshaw, and Steve had hit Bradshaw like 8 times before John even realized he was in a fight. And he stepped in a bag, fell down, or it was horrible. It was a horrible thing. But they all apologized and hugged it out that day at TV, and it was interesting affair.
Well, the match between Shamrock and Bradshaw does not take place as the Acolytes end up destroying Ken before Test comes out to make the save. Ken has saved and helped Stephanie so many times on this Raw that when it comes time for her sacrifice, it's not Ken that successfully saves her, but Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, in hindsight, that would have been a great spot for Ken to just continue that story and make the save.
But the story wasn't with Ken. The story was with Austin and Vince.
But Ken was the one running around backstage. Why wasn't that Stone Cold the whole time?
Because that was the whole reason, because you thought it was going to be Shamrock and Austin was coming out as a surprise at the end.
I got you.
And Steve had enough. And Steve would come for Stephanie. Wasn't doing it for Mr. McMahon. He was doing it because it was the evil Undertaker and because it was a helpless young woman there that was just guilty of nothing other than being Vince's daughter. So Stone Cold came out to help her, not to help Vince. The story was always, it was prerequisite, and it was beautiful storytelling in that regard because it was Vince. When you thought it was Vince and Undertaker, the real story all along underneath was Vince and Undertaker luring Austin in and getting Austin closer along the way.
Well, let's talk about what's next. I can't believe this is real, but you guys reveal a new faction called the Union of People You Ought to Respect, son, or Up Yours for short. That's UPYORS. Of course, thankfully, we eventually just call them the Union. Mankind is the leader. Vince McMahon is backing him. The other members are Test, Big Show, and Ken Shamrock. And this is in response to the corporate ministry having sort of merged together and perhaps some of the dumbest shit from the era. Up Yours, Bruce? Come on,
Oh,
man.
my God. Was that the drizzling shits or what?
Awful. It'd have to improve to be the drizzling shits.
Yeah, it was horrible. Absolutely horrible. But yeah, and again, that was like, Russo's thing, Pretty Mean Sisters, PMS.
Yeah.
Yeah, he liked doing that shit.
Yeah.
It's just, and the imagery, you ever see the movie Fist? F-I-S-T with Sylvester Stallone? It's about, it was loosely based on Jimmy Hoffa.
Okay.
And Stallone was a union leader, and they had the 2x4s, and they went and they fought and everything. And great movie, good movie, but that's kind of what it was loosely based on. Yeah.
Got it.
Pretty Mean Sisters.
Well, we know how the story goes. Vince reveals himself to be the higher power, and essentially everyone on the babyface side looks moronic because they believed Vince except Stone Cold. The union lasts all of 5 weeks, mercifully. And it's reported at the time that along with his on-screen persona maybe falling apart, his backstage persona was having issues as well. Ken starts to date his on-screen sister Ryan in real life. And unfortunately, he's married at the time, and I guess that's falling apart. I know it's not something you probably dabble in or pay much attention to, but sometimes you're unfortunately maybe drug into it when the talents start dating each other and maybe one's married. I'm sure you hear things. Where do you draw the line of what's worth discussing and what's not?
Look, again, everybody has choices in their lives to make.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do in their personal time, as long as it doesn't affect business, it's not really anything to get involved in. If they're hurting themselves and they're hurting the business, then yeah, man, you probably need to get involved in it. But that's a personal choice. And would I make the same choice? No, I wouldn't. But at the same time, a lot of guys are having problems and issues at home.
All right.
So it's that's the realities of living on the road and being on the road as much as we were on the road and traveling all over the place. You're together all the time and things happen.
Ken would have this to say: I was so much better than everyone else. The natural ability that was probably a curse because I was still able to go out and have fun and party. I'd still go in there and be much better than 90% of them in the ring. And people will go, that's good, right? But it's a curse because if I would have slipped and my performance had been going down, it might have made me wake up a little sooner. Like, whoa, I'm ruining myself here. But because I was able to maintain such a high caliber in the ring and still be able to do that partying, it just meant I was able to do it for a longer period of time. Do you agree with that? Did you think that Ken was able to get to another gear and perhaps he was partying too much and maybe that affected his upward mobility in the company?
I have no idea what his partying habits were like. Really don't. I don't know. I don't ever remember hearing, oh, hey, Ken Shamrock's out of control. Never heard of Ken, abusing drugs. Never heard of Ken really having any issues with it. So if he was able to go out and party and still come in and perform at the level that he did perform, good for him. Again, I don't ever recall hearing any of that or ever remember it affecting his work. So look, he would know, and if that's how he felt, then obviously he would know. But I don't ever remember anybody going in, Kenny's out of hand in the bars, or Kenny's doing this or doing that. That never got to me.
Ken would say that during his time in the union around that time, quote, they wanted me to fight China and they were going to have China go over on me. And I had no problem with that. Have her come in and punch me and cover me. but they wanted me to have a match. I said, I can't do that. I've taught my kids to never hit a girl, and they kind of laughed. But I couldn't punch her and then go tell my kids that they shouldn't hit a girl. Listen, I understand that, you know, some people are weird about intergender, and we'll table that conversation for another time. But on the other hand, is from your perspective, was this Ken being difficult, or is this another one of those, all right, I could see maybe that's another thing worth fighting for, but it is, as you said, if you're not going to do it, somebody else is.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think had Ken tried it on and been able to, you know, work around all of that and make it work, that it would have worked. But
Conspiracy theories would say, hey, this is a guy who wouldn't put over Dan Severn. There's no way he's going to put over a woman. And I don't know. Do you have an opinion on that?
No, I you know, the Dan Severn thing is a completely different issue.
Right.
Right. And the reason that's a different issue is because Dan and Ken were competitors in the UFC. All right. They came from that shoot fighting background, and I think there was a pride there amongst both of them. I don't think that Severn would have been happy putting Shamrock over either. So I think there was just that pride there with those two guys in their previous life and their tough guy world in which they existed. That, look, if you want us to fight, go out and fight for real, pay us a lot of money. Hey, we'll go fight each other and let the winner, you know, let the better man win. But I think there was just a little bit of that pride, man. But that was not just on Kenny. That was on both of them.
Right.
So, and in a weird way, I got it because I also knew, and I always felt, you know, where Ken wanted to continue doing MMA. I think that was still in his blood. He was still looking for, you know, that big fight after his run here was done.
I just assume that you guys know that by this point, that he is thinking about, you know, the next big MMA run, and having a loss, even in storyline, to a woman, probably not something he wants.
Yeah, I don't think that wouldn't have affected him one iota.
Okay.
Working with China and doing that, I don't think would have affected him one iota at all.
Eventually, there's an on-screen issue with the two, and Shamrock would belly to belly China and choke her before walking away. And of course, Shamrock would say this is because he refused at the time to work with Triple H's girlfriend, that now he's made himself a political enemy of Triple H. And he even says that he would defeat Hunter on the road a lot when he first came in. And maybe that's another reason that Hunter held a grudge. I have to admit, outside of Ken talking about it, I never heard that there was any issue between Shamrock and Hunter. Have you?
No.
Yeah.
That's why as you're reading that, I'm going, huh?
Yeah, I never heard
make
that.
A whole lot of sense. No.
Well, without China to work with, our man is going to move on to working with Jeff Jarrett, which would include a match with Ken Shamrock where he would beat Jarrett while he was in a straitjacket. So we're still trying all kinds of silliness here, but yeah, a straitjacket. He's still getting quite the reaction on the show from the fans. And it does feel like he's a different style character than a lot of the other over-the-top characters in the Attitude Era. And I guess now he said no to creative twice. Once about hooking up with Ryan and once about beating up China. He's going to enter a feud with Steve Blackman. And I guess that's a natural fit because of the martial arts background. But it's probably going to help Blackman more than it helps Shamrock, no?
I think, you know, again, it was a natural. I think
right.
When you look at those two guys, it's like a natural fit for them. You want to see which one of those badasses is going to come out the victor. Plus, they were good friends and had chemistry. So it was something that you could go towards that I think Kenny enjoyed and Steve as well. But it was obviously going to help Blackman more, and Blackman needed the help at that time. That was to see if, you know what, does Steve have it or not? And putting him in there with Ken was definitely going to tell you one way or another.
Well, what I remember is in this era, you know, Ken is starting to have a bit of a split focus. He's spending a lot of time at his gym, the Lion's Den, and in July of '99, he even shows up at the UFC pay-per-view, UFC 21, and he's talking about how he's going to be returning to fighting soon. And Jim Ross on his podcast has said that, from his perspective, the reason Ken, you guys never went all the way with him, is he had reliability issues. He would be late to shows. He would have a few no shows, and eventually JR had to fine him. Was reliability an issue, at least in your mind, that, or was it more of the threat of he might not be with us long term because he wants to do MMA?
Well, first of all, I think part of it is we all knew he wanted to go back and do MMA.
Right.
Okay. So that was always there. In, reliability, dependability. Yeah, man, that's a factor. If you can't come to work on time, you can't, show up on time and be where you're supposed to be. If we can't depend on you, then yes, that is an issue. So I don't think that it was so bad that I think once he got fined, he didn't do it again. But I think there was a little bit of a run there where, Kenny probably had other things on his mind.
Well, I'll tell you, from the outside looking in, I could see why some people felt like you guys had a hard-on for Ken Shamrock. I don't think you did, but if you like a hard-on, the best one you ever had, Blue Chew can help. Boys and girls, come on now, let's talk about sex. Guys, remember the days when you were always ready to go? Well, now you can increase your performance and get that extra confidence in bed. Listen up, we're talking about BlueChew.com. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Take these dudes anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process is simple. Once you sign up at BlueChew.com, you'll consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and then once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. And Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. Chew it and do it. We've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code WRESTLE at checkout. Just pay the $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is WRESTLE, and you'll receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. So, do you kind of wish that maybe Ken hadn't gone to the UFC pay-per-view and announced that he was looking to return to fighting? Is that something you guys discuss ahead of time, or are you surprised?
Would have rather have done it on our venue, been able to make that jump and help make that deal different. But I think Ken, wanted to move on. Ken wanted to go back to fighting. And that's,
does he give you a heads up, or do you just?
I think he did.
Okay.
Let me put it this way. I knew that Ken really had a desire to go back and fight.
Right.
So I knew we were going to get to the point of looking at that and letting him out of his contract or, crossing that bridge. But I think that he kind of got to the bridge pretty quick there and by going to UFC and doing that.
Did he get any heat for the way he did it?
I don't know that it was necessarily heat as much. It was like, God damn, man, what the fuck? You're not telling us what you're doing.
Right.
So,
let's talk about Ryan for a minute. Like, there's two reports out there. On the one hand, it's, hey, if Ken's leaving, we don't need her. Let's let her go. And there's another report that you guys offered her a contract and she refused to sign it. So it's like, well, if you don't want to sign a contract and you don't want to be here, move on. Which one was it? Do you recall?
Both.
Okay.
It's actually both. So she had been offered a contract. She had been offered a contract just like everyone else. And she hemmed and hawed on signing it so long that when it came time, for Kenny to move on, that there was really no longer a need for Ryan. So, okay, great. Don't sign the contract. Thank you very much. See you down the road.
Well, what we see down the road is Ken having a flight issue just a couple weeks later at a house show in Toronto. And instead, Edge takes the spot in the Intercontinental Championship match against Jeff Jarrett, and Edge goes over. I guess this is the old classic. The replacement has to be better than the original. Let's let them see something they wouldn't normally see. What is the thinking here?
Yeah, give them something that's, first of all, it's in Canada.
Right.
Edge is Canadian.
Yep.
And different world up there, man. They love their Canadians. You know, it's funny the patriotism that Canada has, and used to be our country had that patriotism still just as strong. If you were just an American, oh by God, you were the baby face. In Canada, you're Canadian, man. You're the baby face in Canada. And here's an opportunity. You've got one of your own, an up and comer. Yeah, put him over. It's pretty good.
At Fully Loaded, right after this title switch, it's the next day. Shamrock's going to defeat Steve Blackman, and I believe what was called an Iron Circle match, but let's call it what it really was. It's a circle of cars parking lot match with Ken and Steve in the middle.
They're surrounded by metal. It's a circle of metal, circle of iron. It's just not right description. It's a bunch of metal and engines. You're surrounded by them.
Are you for these? I mean, this is almost like a cinematic movie or a cinematic match before that was a thing. What do you think of this?
I loved it.
Okay.
Thought it was good. You know, look, it's two guys that style of fighting, that's what they did, and be able to take it to a different arena. I thought it was pretty neat, and it allowed them to be showcased in a different way. I've always
you know what happened the next night when in doubt, hit that motherfucker with a car. Yes, we do. Steve Blackman hits Ken Shamrock with a car, but Shamrock manages to come back later that same night, and he loses to Hunter in the middle of the ring when the referee stops it for internal bleeding. Yeah, we had a match stopped for internal bleeding here, with Shamrock's contract not expiring for months after he would go back to the UFC. I'm wondering, like, were you guys trying to co-promote it all with the UFC here and try to get some sort of a return that way? We know you're in business with them these days, but way back when, was that ever discussed?
At one point, yeah. Had a decent relationship with Meyerowitz, but I don't, I really don't think that they would have been into it at the time.
Right.
They were way too protective of realism and what have you. So there wasn't a big desire on their side. Now, where we definitely would have helped them was just with exposure and be able to get that promoted on our television worldwide and make Kenny an even bigger star for them as well. But I don't think that it ever got too far down the road.
Let's talk about JR on his Ross report. He would go on and say, quote, Ken Shamrock will be decreasing his WWF schedule in 2000 to return to the martial arts and fighting world. Shamrock wants to compete in a few fights next year and then will possibly return to an active WWF schedule. WWF officials are fully supporting Ken's efforts and may even explore the possibility of helping promote the world's most dangerous man in these pending fights. So clearly, JR is saying there is a plan for him to return in the future. Did you think that was real, or is it just optimism?
The door was open. The door was definitely open. The crazy thing, I don't know if we talked about this the first time we talked about Ken, but how Ken would prepare for a fight. Ken would go to the Lion's Den, and in this case, I think it was Dallas, and Ken would have the living shit beat out of him for either a week or two. Where no offense, Ken would his students would go in there and they would beat the living holy hell out of him. And that was how he got conditioned to start going in to train for his fights. And I just always thought that was amazing because he would come be just beat to hell. And he's like, yeah, no, that's what, because I go in and my guys beat the shit out of me. And he becomes conditioned to taking that punishment. No different than in the ring when you're taking bumps every night. After, the third night, it's just second nature. You don't feel it anymore. Your body becomes calloused and conditioned to it. And that's how Kenny trained to fight. And I just always thought that was amazing.
The blow-off for Shamrock and Blackman is going to happen at SummerSlam with a Lion's Den match with weapons all around the cage. What did you think of that presentation and the chemistry with these two guys together?
Well, first of all, I loved the Lion's Den. Liked the concept. It was a neat little deal. that we did and just gave a little bit different presentation. So it was just so intimate and different, more than anything. And to put these two guys in there gave them a completely different feel for their match. So to me, it worked. And man, there's nobody that's going to tell you they could see through anything that Steve Blackman or Ken Shamrock did.
Oh no, I agree with that totally.
Yeah.
So Blackman starts going over Ken on the house shows in this era, even though Shamrock's going to get the win on pay-per-view. That was kind of curious to me, because in hindsight, if Ken's leaving, why not put Blackman over at the pay-per-view?
Don't know.
Yeah.
That's a conundrum there.
Well, Jericho's going to debut in the company, and before Shamrock leaves the arena on a SmackDown, they bump into each other, which leads to Shamrock chasing the Jericho flunky at the time, Howard Finkel. Jericho would write, in Shamrock's mind, if he was supposed to chase me, he was going to chase me at full speed, and he did. I ran down the aisle, and when he spotted me, he charged as fast as he could. I knew if he caught me, he would hurt me, so I took off down the aisle like Ben Johnson post water bottle swig. When we raced through the curtain out of the audience's view, I slowed down, but he didn't, and he tackled me as hard as he could in the hallway. Ken, did you really need to tackle me? Nobody can even see you. And Ken said, I knew I could catch you, which is just hilarious.
Yeah.
That's really Ken's mentality, though, right? Just wide open.
Chase, man. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Ken's a stud. Ken's just, Ken's one of those guys. When you talk about world-class athletes, Ken fit in that category.
How much did Vince love the idea, McMahon, of Shamrock chasing after Howard Finkel? He loved that shit, didn't he?
Well, Howard was quick, man. Howard was fast, dude.
Iconic wrestler Kevin Von Erich just announced his first public tour. The show, titled Stories from the Top Rope, will feature Von Erich sharing insight into his career, personal triumphs, and tragedies. Stories from the Top Rope will go on sale June 2nd at EmporiumPresents.com and will offer a very limited number of VIP tickets, which include a meet and greet and photo op. Von Erich, now 65, will be the subject of a major motion picture, Iron Claw, which stars Zac Efron and is slated for release later this year. See Kevin Von Erich live September 1st in Dallas, September 2nd in San Antonio, September 3rd in Corpus Christi, September 5th in Houston, September 6th in Shreveport, September 8th in Oklahoma City, September 9th in Amarillo, and September 10th in Midland. Tickets on sale at EmporiumPresents.com.
You're going to have Mr. Hughes involved. Howard Finkel is going to be dressed in disguises. Ken is maybe not the strongest on the stick, and Jericho's going to make him look silly week after week, if we're honest. But Ken's probably checked out. Like, he knows, man, I'm going to the UFC. It kind of is what it is. And on an episode of Raw, we get a match between Shamrock and Hughes. And Hughes is maybe not known to be the best worker in the world, but he gives Ken a live round, and Ken potatoes him back. And then allegedly, according to the rumor and innuendo, Ken cut quite a promo on Hughes backstage. It's reported in all the newsletters. Do you remember their beef, their dust up, Mr. Hughes and Shamrock?
I really don't. I remember, little snug, and, Curtis was just coming back. Curtis had dropped a lot of weight. He wasn't the Mr. Hughes that everybody remembered.
Right.
He was probably, 60 pounds less, or maybe 80 pounds less. He was much different guy. And I think that Curtis was still, finding his way with his timing and everything, and coming back, and a little nervous being back as well. So I don't think it was intentional, but I could look, man, ain't ballet, and tempers are going to flare. You got two grown ass men in there. Shit's going to happen.
Then at a house show, supposedly Shamrock takes a hard kick from him and aggravates his neck. So at SmackDown, Jericho is in full hockey garb. He's going to cause him to cough up blood with a hockey stick to the gut. And unbelievably, that's the end of Ken Shamrock in the WWF. Without even putting Jericho over at the Unforgiven pay-per-view, what can you tell us? I mean, this feels like this is the beginning of a promo, and then he's out. what led to him leaving seemingly abruptly? I mean, it would have made sense, right, to put over Jericho with the pay-per-view and finish the story, or why not?
Because I don't think he wanted to do it, and I think that it was at the time where it was, what's better, to just go ahead and let him leave then, or to try and drag this thing out, and it's not going to be what you want it to be.
Right.
I don't think his heart was in it. I don't think Kenny really wanted to stay at that point. So you cut your losses and move on.
Did you ever envision him returning to the company?
I did. I really did. I thought that Kenny would be, one of those guys that would definitely come back and have another bright run. And I mean, maybe I'm looking at it through rose-colored glasses because I genuinely like Ken Shamrock a lot. I wanted him to come back because I liked him personally, and I thought he was a hell of a talent. So that was wishful thinking probably on my part.
It's interesting to me with all the people who've left and some of the folks you thought, man, they'll never be back, and they came back. Ken never does. Why do you think that was? I know once upon a time he had some litigation. You and I found out about that once accidentally, but I can't put my finger on why it never happened. Do you remember you guys ever getting close?
I don't. I don't know, but I also don't know that Ken ever tried to come back.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't know, maybe somebody reached out to him at one point. He didn't want to do it, or I don't really know. But, it takes two to tango there. And
Sure
I don't know that Ken definitely wanted to come back.
Do you think Ken, in hindsight, is one of the biggest missed opportunities in WWF? Like when I talked to Jeff about TNA, he always talks about Monty Brown as being the one that got away. What about Ken Shamrock for you in the WWF?
Look, I thought Ken had a hell of a run.
Yeah.
Ken had a hell of a run. He really did. And I don't think that there was anything that was missed with Shamrock. Could we have gotten more? Was there more to get? Absolutely. There's always more to get. But I don't think that we were shortchanged or that Ken was shortchanged in any way in the relationship. I think that it worked out the best for both sides.
Do you see him in the Hall of Fame one day, and do you think he deserves it?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I do. I think that Ken, look at this, man. Here was a guy who was an amateur wrestler, got in the wrestling business. He was, worked in the Carolinas, an enhancement talent, and then went to make a name for himself in mixed martial arts and had the charisma, but he also had the skills to become a star in that world.
We should do some questions here. Drew Landry has a great one. Any
Oh shit, I'm choking. Sorry.
Well, let's get a camera on you so we can get the footage of this.
No.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm great. Sorry, went down the wrong hole there.
We're gonna show you your mute button one day. That's exactly what everybody wanted in their ear, Bruce.
Yeah. You're welcome.
But what happened? Did you just swallow down the wrong hole?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did. I was taking my my nighttime meds so that I could go to sleep, and I chugged it, and it went down the wrong hole.
That's what she said. Drew Landry wants to know, any conversation about bringing Shamrock back to battle Kurt Angle over the ankle lock finisher? How well do you think those two could have worked together? Bruce, when I talk about missed opportunities, I think of that one in particular. Like, that's just right there, man. Like this legit Olympic gold medalist, this legit UFC champ, the ankle lock. God, that could have been fun.
Would have been great. And I think that they would have had instant chemistry. You know, Kurt Angle and Ken Shamrock, just let them go. Man, they wouldn't have to discuss a damn thing, and I think that they would make beautiful music together. Unfortunately, that one never happened, but it would have been great. Would have liked to have seen that, sure.
Matt Godfrey says, fantasy booking, Shamrock versus Lesnar or Shamrock versus Angle, which one could have main evented WrestleMania?
In a different time, Again, if you were to take Kenny at his peak and Brock at his peak, actually either one of them, I think definitely could have.
Those are just
Brock would have been interesting at the time,
and no doubt. You know, we talk a lot on some of our shows about how timing is everything. I kind of think that's the deal here with Ken Shamrock. Like if he wouldn't have jumped and come over in 97 and instead he would have came out in 2000, and this could all looked a lot different, don't you think?
sure, yeah. And you know, when you look at it too, Ken was the first.
Yeah.
You know, UFC was new, and this whole Ultimate Fighting Championship was this gimmick. A lot of people thought at the time, and people were wondering, is this going to work, and what's going to happen here? So Kenny was the first to make that jump over, even though, look, that's where he started originally. So yeah, if we had just, you know, had a little more time and a different time and place, who knows what could have happened.
Really fun question here. I could never get into Shamrock because of his lack of charisma. Was pairing
What?
him with the manager ever discussed? So listen, I don't agree with the lack of charisma, but a manager, I could see if you were going to make him a heel, maybe he might need a mouthpiece. Do you remember ever even considering a
I
manager?
mean, he was part of the corporate ministry, or not corporate ministry, but
The union.
the union and corporation. So yeah, I mean, he did have people to talk. Ken Shamrock is never somebody I would say that lacked charisma. Kenny fucking oozed charisma.
Yes.
Just, you know, walking in, he walked with swagger and walked with like, man, you know, he had the BMF walk before there was a BMF walk.
Yeah, he did. Instagram a wrestling historian wants to know, did you guys ever discuss putting the WWF championship on him after he won the King of the Ring tournament? It was a moment in time. You think you could have got there, seen Ken as the top dog?
I think that, yeah, you definitely could have. Absolutely. I think that Ken would have been in that conversation. But, you know, again, it was very, very crowded at the top and very competitive, and not everybody can be there at the same time.
We got a question here that I'd never heard from or heard about. Dismal Abysmal says, has Bruce ever heard the rumor of how Ken Shamrock was open to coming back to the WWF, provided he was guaranteed a world title run? Is this something talent has ever demanded as part of a deal? And would Vince ever entertain such a request?
No, there's not any truth to that.
Yeah, I've never heard that.
Usually when you hear, oh, well, they're going to be guaranteed this or that, that's
Bullshit.
usually what they hear.
Right. And usually that's someone, maybe Vince, saying something along the lines of, I could see you as champion. And then they take that to mean, oh, he promised me a championship run. But that's not what he said.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, next week we're going to talk about King of the Ring 1997.
All right.
One of the goofiest tournaments of all time. It's going to lead to Hunter finally getting his crown that maybe he was supposed to get in 96. Farouk is going to challenge The Undertaker for the WWF title. And the tag team champions are unlikely here. And Shawn Michaels and Steve Austin, they're not defending the titles. They're wrestling each other as tag champs. And yeah, this is Shawn's first pay-per-view singles match since the Royal Rumble. Remember, this is the year he lost his smile. That's what we'll be covering this Friday. Of course, in the meantime, to hold you over, we've got a brand new interview with Keith Elliott Greenberg, an award-winning author and historian, taking a look back at his time in the WWF during the golden era of wrestling. All of that is available now at adfreeshows.com. And if your business targets men 25 to 54 years old, no better place to advertise than right here on Something to Wrestle With. You've heard some of the same ads for the same companies year after year. Why is that? Because it really works. And with our super targeted audience, there's very little waste. Go to advertisewithbruce.com right now to find out more about advertising here on the program. Love to have your interaction on social. We're at Prichard Show on Twitter and Instagram. Something to Wrestle over on Facebook. And the easiest, cheapest, best way to support the show, man, subscribe to our YouTube. It's somethingtowrestle.com. That's somethingtowrestle.com. We've also got a ton of fun swag right now over at somethingtowrestleshirts.com, including Brother Love's Endless Love line. Good stuff. Feeling Brucey, Whiz Awful, His House, something for everybody. Even got your famous little rock on deal going there, Bruce. I had fun today talking about Ken Shamrock, but I am looking forward to talking about 1997 next week. Man, that was It's an interesting time for the company, the summer of 97.
Certainly was, and it was certainly an interesting run with that king of the ring. Because I would defy anybody to try and find me a picture of Triple H wearing the crown.
He stomped him over and over and over, did he not?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that next week, as long as you can make it there. Are you going to clear your throat and pull through?
Boy, by God, it's unbelievable. It's terrible, Conrad.
Well, I hope you're okay for TV.
I hope I'm all right.
You got your TV biscuit on?
You know I do.
Yeah, there you go.
Today.
Well, we'll see you folks this Friday, coming back at you real fast. King of the Ring 1997 on deck, right here on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
Rock on.
Fight Plus is the ultimate digital platform for live sports and entertainment, and they're now offering a free 7-day trial at tryfight.com. Fight Plus is packed with a premium live event schedule, over 1,000 hours of live action every year, and a library of more than 4,000 hours on demand, plus exclusive content you can't get anywhere else. Fight is a great partner of ours. They support us, so let's support them. Give that free 7-day trial a shot, and you'll be a member for life. That's tryfight.com. tryfite.com.
Hey guys, Eric Bischoff here, and just want to call a quick timeout. I want to tell your listeners about what I've been telling everybody at over at 83 Weeks, quite a while now, about all the cool things that are happening over at adfreeshows.com.
On the latest edition of Monday Mailbag, Mike Chioda shares road stories of hanging with Taker and BSK.
Yeah, we did. We played dominoes. We played Beale Street, called Trump. It's a card game. Gin. We used to play gin card games with them. Dominoes. I used to go back in the back of the bus for BSK, roll up a couple fatties for them. And they'd let me smoke one or two and they'd say, okay, Coyote, you got to go back up.
The Podfather sat down with Ad Free Shows members for a live edition of Ask Conrad, talking about the one thing that brings us all together.
A guy who owns a trucking company in Vermont, how in the hell is he friends with a guy who does mortgages in Alabama? Wrestling brought us together. So when we created this concept of ad-free shows, I had no idea that a pandemic was right around the corner, but it did become like this weird support group. Not like in a bad way, not in a tragic or trauma way, just in a, hey, it's a bunch of friends who can get together and bounce ideas and share their life with each other.
That's just a small taste of what we've got waiting for you with 4 levels to choose from. See for yourself why ad-free shows is the best value in wrestling today. Sign up now at adfreeshows.com.